My name is Timothy Terrell. I served in 10 Special Forces Group as a combat scuba diver for 6.5 years in the United States Army. I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder from services in combat operations. I have a 80% service-connected disability from PTSD. I had gone through the VA through prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive process therapy or CBT, CPT. I also did EMDR, eye movement, redistribution, whatever that is. None of those processes were successful, and the PET actually exacerbated my PTSD. Then I met Cherie through a friend, and she did her process with me, which I didn't understand. I didn't think it would work. I was pretty apprehensive, if you will, about the process in and of itself. And I just talked with her. We met. We followed through the process, and her treatment was phenomenal. It was not a magic wand. It was not a magic pill. It was a process. It was work. But the fact that instead of a therapist, I actually felt like I had a friend. I had somebody there who genuinely was concerned about me, and the process was a lot easier to go through than the other processes that I had experienced and worked with. And the results were very fast. They were pretty much immediate relief from the PTSD. Wow. So the first day I walked into Cherie's, I'll be quite honest and candid here. So I had just tried to kill myself twice in December. I was unsuccessful, thank God. It was a pretty dark and bad spot of my life. If it wasn't for Cherie, I don't know where I'd be at this point. But today, I'm focused on my business again. I've got some direction. I've got some headwind going. I'm hopeful. I have optimistic plans every day now instead of a defeated attitude. So that was Cherie. So Cherie explained her concept of PTSD, and it made a lot of sense to me. A lot of people just come in and say, okay, you got PTSD, here it is. And so they start working on a process, and they really don't understand you. They really don't understand what's going on and stuff like that. They just want to start doing a process and check the boxes. And simply all you are is a tab of paper with the boxes being checked. But with Cherie, what she did was she was like, okay, first thing, let's understand that 100 people had the same experience you had. 5 of you got PTSD out of it. That's because there was like a pre-event that happened earlier in your life that was making you susceptible to respond the way you did to that event. You didn't respond wrong, you didn't respond right, you just responded differently than the other 95 people. So she said, if you need to think about it in any way, think of it like Kool-Aid. You can have a packet of Kool-Aid and you can have water. It's not until you put them together that you have Kool-Aid. And so that's kind of what it was. I had an experience in my childhood that made me susceptible to PTSD in combat as an adult. And those two came together to create the PTSD that I suffered. And so whenever she went back and dealt with my childhood, I mean, that was something that had been dealing with me for 40 years, 35 years. And she just dealt with it just like, taking a Band-Aid off. And it was non-threatening, non-confrontational. It was just very easy. And there was an immediate relief. I mean, instantaneous relief. Okay, so my grandmother had 9 children, 6 of them boys. All of them served in the military. And she was in Army Mothers, and I still remember her telling stories about going to Army mothers and making quilts or Afghans or fundraisers and stuff like that to help the people in the community. And I grew up in a small town, so everybody was part of it. Well, my dad was in the Navy. He was one of the 6 boys, and then he passed away when I was 10. So it was like, I need to be my dad. I need to fulfill his shoes, and I need to be an honorable man like he was. So at the age of 10, I knew I was going into the military because my father had passed away. And that was, I'm certain, what he would have wanted me to do, because all of his brothers went to the military. He went to the military. It's what the boys in our family do, is they're supposed to go to the military. So. Very surprised. It was kind of like, okay, what kind of quackery are you talking about? And I apologize, Cherie. I really do. When we first met, she's like, okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to lay down and you're going to close your eyes, and I'm going to walk you through this stuff. And then we're just going to walk out of it, and it's going to be fine. I'm like, okay, clearly you don't know what I'm dealing with. So how can you say that? Because you're like, oh, we're just going to go play some Frisbee in the park, and it's going to be wonderful. So it was really good that I was disarmed. It wasn't like, oh my God, you're dealing with the worst thing ever, but I'm going to help you through it. No, it was more like, hey, we're just going to go for a walk. It's going to be a nice, easy day. There's going to be some sun, and there's going to be some breeze, and you're going to hear a couple birds, but everything's going to be fine. And so that calming reassurance, and then going into it and say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to visualize, and you're visualizing, but actually you're in a time loop. And she'll explain all that to you, because I really don't understand. I just know that your memory is actually a regression to that time and that moment. If you've been smacked enough, somebody raises their hand, you automatically feel like the first time you were smacked and stuff like that. And it's the same thing. It's the same concept. And so she takes you through your memory of it, through that, gets you into that time loop, and then pulls you out of that time loop so that you're no longer bound to that sequence of events, that sequence of emotions. And that's the process. That's where the real therapy or treatment is done. And you can't do it sitting there listening to a tape about yourself. You can't talk about it. You can't rehearse it and go over it 1,000 times like doing PET. You walk through it with her, and it's pretty simple. It's really clear. Yes, and I can wholeheartedly agree with that apprehension. The prolonged exposure therapy was, hey, we got a great idea here. We're going to take your worst day of your life, and we're going to make you relive it 5 times in an hour. Then we're going to send you out into the world a better person that day. So, one, they took me into a room with a counselor, and we relived my worst experience in my entire life. There were no hugs afterwards. There were no reassurances. There were, well, I'll see you in a couple of days. We need to do this treatment 3 times a week. We need to do this, this, and this. So there was no comforting. It was just raw and gritty. There was no Band-Aids. There was nothing. It was intense there. And then you're sent home. You're sent to work. You're sent to be around people. And you've got all this raw emotion sitting there. So I was very apprehensive, and it got worse and worse and worse. And I think that was part of the problem that affected the PET, was because I was so engrossed in how I was feeling day to day and how I was guarding myself to reacting with people that I would meet and things like that. So I never really gave myself a chance to heal. But with Cherie's process, it is an immersion therapy. You're in it. You're there. But at the end of that session, at the end of that hour, 2 hours, whatever it is that she feels she needs with you, you're not left to go home alone. You're not left to walk out the door with all that grief on your shoulders. She actually leaves you in a space and in a mindset that is very better. It's very nurturing and comforting and healthy and well. It's hard to explain, real great to experience. I think that's the best way I can say it. It's a different thing. It's very different. But I would never recommend prolonged exposure. I would never recommend CPT or any of the other therapies out there for it because of the effects that it does have. The difference in working with Cherie is working with any other counselor or anything like that. I cannot stress enough of how this stranger, this person who opened up her world and her heart to me and became my friend in this whole process. It wasn't gloves off, you're a patient, anything like that. It was, I'm your friend. I'm going to walk you through this because I've had this walk too. I've made this journey myself. I've been there. I've done that. Trust me. And so now you have somebody on your side who you know will be there for you. And Christmas, she was there for me. At 10:30 at night, she told me to call her because I was upset. I had reached out and said, I'm upset. She said, well, give me a call. And so she made herself available in a way that other counselors and other therapists will never do for any of their patients. It's truly a blessing to have her not only as a friend, but as a counselor. And that's how she's different.
Excellent.
So the process, if I can explain this, you lay down, you close your eyes, and you are recalling the event. So to you, you're in memory. You remember the day, you're pulling up the smells, you're pulling up sounds and things like that you're hearing. So it's your memory, your memory of the event, and you're going through it. Well, what Cherie is doing is guiding you through this and talking you through it, and it's really getting your mind back to that moment in time, to that exact experience. And then she alters that experience, which in a way alters the way your mind recalls that. So now you're changing your memory, you're changing that recall. And that's what EMRD is supposed to do. So she does that in a way that is subtle and in a way that is non-conflictive and non-confrontational and actually very empowering. You leave feeling like you made the change, you did something that you would have done then, and that also helps you process through some of the guilt that you were experiencing from that event, which is a huge indicator of why people end up with PTSD is because they have guilt or remorse for what they did or for that event. And so whenever she takes you back there, whether it's in your memory or whether it's in a time travel machine or whatever you want to call it, you're there and you have a memory recollection that now you are empowered to deal with it. And that changes everything. It changes the way you feel about it. It changes the way you feel about the experience. It actually changes the way you recall the experience. And if you do it and you follow through with it, it kind of changes the way that you remember it. And people are like, well, now you're just making up a history. No. Here's the reality of things. If you watch a car wreck take place, you'll say, well, this is what happened. Well, and if you do an investigation of it, you'll find out that your memory of that car wreck that happened 15 minutes ago is actually a little bit different than what you said it was, because we have a way of only seeing portions or parts of what we're seeing, and we respond and hold on to those feelings. If you can change those feelings and the perception that you have an event, you've now changed the whole event. And that's what she helps you do. She empowers you to help change that event. One to 10. The childhood memory, my father's death, it was very traumatic for me. It was a very painful memory. That was a high 10 on there. And there were some events that came out from that and stuff like that that she brought up and brought to light and we dealt with. Now, because she empowered me to protect myself And to change that situation or change the way I remember that situation, it's about a 2. It's you know, it still hurts me. I've lost my dad. That's always going to hurt. But now it's not a debilitating memory. It's, you know, hey, I lost my dad. Hundreds of people lose their dad every day. And it's very sad, but we can move on. We can experience that and not be crippled by it, where before I was crippled by it. So I'll say this. If you are a veteran and you suffer from PTSD, call Cherie today, honestly, okay? We have been guinea pigs for the government for years. It's what we've been. Be a guinea pig for yourself. Go try her services out. Go talk to her. Just talk to her. And if you don't believe that she can help you, no harm, no foul. If you try it and you commit to doing the service, the treatment process, you're going to win. It's a win-win. You have nothing to lose. It's inevitable. There's no sense in dealing with the pain. There's no sense in having your life denied you. Events that happen, they're not our fault. Events that happen, it's not our responsibility. And it's time for us to live our lives again like we did before we were in the military, and to have a little bit of ourselves back. And, you know, you can live through PTSD. It can be done. So there's a lot of hope in that. And with Cherie, you will truly have a friend. And I know a lot of people, my Vietnam brothers, thank you, love you, welcome home. First thing on that though is mistrust of the VA. You go in, you put your name down, now you've gone on some government list and you're all this and all that. Cherie's not connected with them. Cherie doesn't have any chart, list, or anything like that she gives to Uncle Sam or anything like that. She truly has your best interest at mind and in her heart. And just talk to her. You'll feel the same way I do, I'm sure. I'm quite positive of it. And she's done phenomenal work with women recovering from sex trade and from abuses that way. Trust her. She's sensitive, she's caring, she's compassionate, she understands your situation. PTSD is PTSD is PTSD. Let her help you through it and go from there.